Hello and welcome to the Ferg Neil Show podcast. It is a glorious day for the pod. 18 months ago, an article popped up in the Daily Mail with my face split screened with a pile of lettuce. The title of that article was Aussie Comedians Slammed for Urging Aussies to Steal from Woolies During a Cost of Living Crisis. The article went on to detail the price gouging that I had alleged was occurring within the major supermarket duopoly. There was a lot of backlash, and over the last year and a half, there has been 4 Daily Mail articles targeting comedian Fergus Neil. That is a supermarket duopoly, one of the most powerful corporate ties in Australia, going after a 26-year-old comedian from Geelong. There has been some sweet vindication over the last 48 hours, begun by the South China Post, a newspaper I did not know existed, calling me up and asking me about the findings handed down recently that indeed the major supermarkets have been price gouging. I responded accordingly. I responded with mirth. I responded with a smidge of smugness. Today, Brad Banducci, the CEO of Woolworths, has retired. He has self-checked out. He has taken a lettuce and left the building. He has put an avocado through as an onion. If you watch the Four Corners report, it was unbelievable to watch how inept 2 of the most powerful CEOs in Australia are. They essentially got a man who is making millions of dollars a year, the 10th highest paid CEO in Australia. They put him in a cashier's uniform. They tried to cosplay him as a minimum wage worker. They gave him a name badge and they asked him some basic questions that I guarantee, and I have a lot of friends who work at Woolworths as cashiers and as shelf stackers, questions that my friends who work at lower rungs in that organization could have answered, and Brad Banducci got up and left. His South African accent now divides the Australian nation, as the South African accent has long divided the South African nation. Brad Banducci is gone. Brad Banducci is no more. Now, it may be a bit preemptive to celebrate. It may be a bit early to celebrate because they're getting a new CEO. Okay, they are getting a new CEO, and I guarantee the job description for the new CEO is: can you price gouge the Australian public? Can you blackmail Australian farmers? And can you blame the price of Vegemite on the war in Ukraine, even though Vegemite is being made in Port Melbourne? Essentially, it's like you're being bullied at school. The principal retires, you celebrate, only to find out that the whole school, the whole organization still believes you should be getting price gouged on the downball court. That's what has occurred, you know? That is what is happening. Even my grandparents were furious watching the Four Corners report because they don't like foreign ownership and they don't like AI. And they thought that the Coles CEO was straight up AI. There was a death march in the eyes of those CEOs. A lot of people want to become rich, and then you meet rich people and you're like, this isn't the way. This is not fun. It's like broken families and a lot of addiction and some eyes wide shut shit. That's the wildest thing. You ever hung around like truly rich people? I had some friends at uni who were truly rich. When I say friends, I got close enough to be invited to the 21st. And it's kind of refreshing because you're like, oh, this isn't the answer. The answer is not to become the CEO of an organization and have servants working for you. I thought that was the answer when I was 7 years old. All right. And I was rowing down the Barwon River in Geelong on a boat. Was I doing that? I don't know. My dad got an Aldi boat once. Aldi in the middle aisle was selling boats. And my dad's like, kids, I got a boat. I'm going to put it on the river. We got to the middle of the river and the boat started taking on water. It was a metaphor for my childhood. Today on the pod, we're in a celebratory mood. It's a time where I think there's change in the air. You can feel it. You can sense that there is change in the air because the corporatism that has been taken over Australia, that has been left untouched, apart from friend of the show, Bob Catter. Bob Catter's been talking about the supermarket duopoly for like 12 years, and now it's finally coming into fruition. Now it's finally coming to a head. May 1,000 blossoms bloom as far as I'm concerned, because I think that the government might have to act. All right, the government is going to have to do something. It won't be anything crazy. It won't be like what the Greens are saying, where they're like, why don't you go in and break up the supermarket duopoly? That's kind of hard in a free market economy. That is hard when your leader is not Joseph Stalin. You can, however, make the voluntary code of conduct mandatory, and if supermarkets don't follow the ACCC codes of conduct, they are handed down enormous fines. That's something you can do, which has immediate impact. Guys, I've just got back from Perth, and as you know, in Perth, a dude did run up onto the stage and try and maim comedian Fergus Neal. I was performing in Fremantle. At this point, Brad Banducci had not retired, so it is possible that Brad Banducci put someone in the crowd and said, we need you to take out Fergus Neal. I was doing jokes on stage to the good people of Perth. Now, when I say the good people of Perth, I'm talking about 20% of the audience, because in Perth, 80% of the people, they're odd. They're odd. It's an odd little, it's the most isolated city in the world. And when you're isolated, you start talking to yourself. And I think there's a lot of people walking down the main street of Perth who are just mumbling to themselves. They're walking down the street mumbling, and you hope they don't lurch out against you. You hope they don't go for the jugular. You hope that on the way to their Rio Tinto meetings, they don't look at you and take you down. I was in Perth performing on stage. There was a dude who might be one of the scariest people I've ever seen in my entire life. His name was Bruce. He was a rigger from somewhere in northern Western Australia. I don't think he was a fan of the East, because I got introduced. I mean, all the comedians that night were from Melbourne, but for some reason they're like, all the way from Melbourne. Why would you do that to me when there is a sociopath in the front row? Why would you do that to me? Why would you take me down like that? I walk on a stage and Bruce drops a glass straight away, drops a glass of beer. Now, comedically, I have to talk about that. I have to act on that. I can't be letting Bruce get away with dropping a glass in the front row. Then I look into Bruce's eyes and I realize that Bruce is in a coma. Bruce might be in a Foster's beer coma, because he was drinking Foster's, which I know sounds like a stereotype of Australia, but I swear to God, this man was drinking Foster's. I agree. I haven't seen Foster's served unless it's in that Simpsons episode where they go to Australia, but I saw Foster's entering into this man's mouth, and I thought, this is not his first Foster's tonight. It's a 6:30 show, and I guarantee this man was drinking while driving a rig. Can you drive a rig? I'm not sure, but that's the East Coast. Again, that's why they hate us. They hate us because they ain't us. But the point is this. The East Coast dominates the West Coast. But also the point is this. Bruce walked up onto the stage after I've been roasting him for a bit. He was bold and muscly, and I called him the Perth Pitball. That was a mistake. That was a mistake. That was, when you're in a big family like me, right before a fight starts, you essentially, when you know you're going to get taken down, you essentially try and say one last thing. You try and put in one last comment before you get taken down. When you see your brother running towards you on the trampoline with a baseball bat, you say, well, you are fat. And then he smacks you over the head. But you try and get that one last comment that emotionally, it's like a goanna bite. It won't take them down immediately, but in 7 to 12 hours, they will think about them and it will lead to some psychological paralysis. Bruce was walking up onto the stage and I said, oh, here comes Perth Pitball. And that made him angrier. And he went to pretend to punch me like this. He put his fist back and I'm like, oh, I'm getting king hit. This will go viral. And then he moves in and he shakes my hand. And I knew I was going to get king hit because there was a girl screaming in the back. She's like, no, don't do it. You know when someone's just like on the edge, like their voice is wavering? I'm like, lady, I'm the one who's going to get taken down. What? Leave him alone. It was like that. It was like, okay, what's going on? This is... The quivering voice is not good. It always happens on the outside. You know, like you're walking through the valley in Brisbane and there's a fight and the girlfriends are always like, leave him alone. It's like when you're 5 years old and you're like, I think I'm going to be... No one got out of there with their dignity. That's what I'm trying to say. Bruce got off the stage and you're thinking, Ferg, well, Bruce got off the stage. Time to celebrate. Time to celebrate. No, I went hard at Bruce. I kept going for Bruce. I kept going for the jugular, and he stood up again and did the exact same thing. And I'm like, guys, can we have security move in at any point? What? We don't have security. Thanks for telling me that right before I roasted a rigger. When you're roasting a rigger, you have to have CCTV on. You have to know that there is CCTV. You have to make sure you flick that button and that in the preceding court case, when you get wheeled in with a debilitating condition, debilitating spinal scoliosis, you know it's being caught on CCTV. 1 for the court case, 2 for the TikTok. Never forget about the TikTok. A lot of people forget about that. They think turn the CCTV on for legal reasons, not in this generation. We don't have the money to sue, but we do have the money to defame character. And Bruce, that video will be getting posted. All right, it's coming out. We're going to make sure that this video comes out and it can be a glorious week where finally the CEO of Woolworths, Brad Banducci, and the CEO of rigging in Perth are both taken down. I feel like with the Woolworths CEO, people are forgetting about the Coles CEO. It didn't help that the Woolworths CEO had a South African accent. Because Australians, they hate one thing, it's foreign ownership. Okay? It comes from deep-seated... It comes from a lot of things, but the point is that they don't like it, okay? They don't like foreign ownership, and as soon as he started speaking in a South African accent, you could hear the baby boomers around Australia moving in their chair. So like, okay, not a fan of this, not a fan of the South African accent. Let's see what the media is saying. Woolworths CEO Brad Banducci has announced his departure from the supermarket giant. Brad Banducci has given notice of his intention to retire and, by agreement with the board, will leave in September 2024. That's a big buffer. It's February. Amanda Barbour has been named as his replacement after an extensive international search process, I'm sure, in 24 hours. Banducci has been with the Woolworths Group for 13 years, including 8.5 as CEO. It's been a privilege to be part of the Woolies team, and one I have never, ever taken for granted, Banducci said in a statement. The news comes after a fire exchange between Banducci and ABC Four Corners reporter Angus Grigg in an interview during which Banducci walked out after being asked about the lack of competition in the industry. He later returned to finish the taping. Banducci headed the company during a recent spate of negative attention. Whoops. Woolworths faced public backlash over the decision to stop stocking Australian Day merchandise, which resulted in opposition leader Peter Dutton, let's call him Peter Butter, calling for a boycott. The grocery chain has also faced ongoing allegations of price gouging, that's us, baby, and unfair dealing with suppliers. I'm not saying we brought down a CEO, but my God, we helped. My God, I think those TikToks that got over 1 million views, you got to think there's 27 million Australians. A lot of those videos were getting 1 million, 2 million views. We're hitting a little bit of Australia. We're hitting a section. We're hitting a population bigger than Perth. Bruce saw that video, is all I'm trying to say. Bruce saw that video and he said, guys, we're taking down Woolies right after we take down comedian Fergus Neal. Because people universally, it doesn't matter how you vote, as soon as people go against Australian farmers, it's on. It's on like Donkey Kong. As soon as you take down Australian farmers, doesn't matter if you're right, left, if you have blue hair, if you believe in a dream, people don't like it when the farmers are being blackmailed. This is an article that came out from Angus Grigg, who did the Four Corners interview. It's called The Tactics Coles and Woolworths Use to Maintain Their Power Over Australia's Grocery Market. Because a lot of people don't know that in the 60s and 70s, as Woolworths were buying up competitors, there were more competitors in Australia. There were various supermarket chains. There was Buy Low. I remember Buy Low. I used to shop there when I was little. I'm like, I want to buy low. Now we're not buying low. We're buying very high. But that's because those supermarkets were bought out, and successive governments allowed for those supermarkets to be bought out. And now we're in a situation where Woolworths and Coles has some of the highest retail profit margins in the world. Coles and Woolworths have a higher profit margin than Walmart. Okay, so that's a bit of context. And I love how the Coles CEO was like, oh yeah, sorry guys, our profit margins are high because of how big Australia is. What? What do you mean? If Australia is big, wouldn't you be losing money on how much it costs to transport stuff? Like, what's the gaslighting here? Coles and Woolworths say they're looking out for you. They are fresh food people or the home of everyday low prices. But the narrative has fractured over the last year as shoppers, workers and farmers feel the squeeze of the powerful duopoly. Four Corners has spoken to insiders, experts and supermarket CEOs themselves to find out just how they operate. Here's what you need to know about how they keep prices high and competitors out. Oh my God. We have an expose, people. We have an expose. The market concentration. Coles and Woolworths control 65% of the grocery market. Aldi has just 10%. Rip, Aldi. On average, for every $10 Australians pay for groceries, $6.50 of that is spent at the big two. The UK has 5 major players vying for a cut of that $10. The US has multiple supermarket chains. We only have Woolworths and Coles. I remember when I was in the UK on the way to Edinburgh Fringe, and you could go to the Co-op, you go to Sainsbury's, you go to Waitrose if you're being a bit fancy and you want like a free-range egg, you know, not one of those Guantanamo Bay chickens. If you wanted the free-range egg, you go to Waitrose, which is more fancier, but there was options, you know. In Australia, I mean, I live near an IGA, so I just go to IGA. But if I'm being real, the IGAs, there's a level of giving up in the air with the IGAs. Like, the level of customer service I get at my local IGA, it's so bad, I've come to enjoy it. Like, it's so bad, I'm like, this has actually become funny. Like, I'm waiting to buy some kombucha, all right? I've got 25 liters of kombucha, and the people having a chat at the cashier, and I'm like, guys, I get it. I get that it's fun to socialize at work, but, like, it's been 5 minutes. Like, it's almost becoming a comedy sketch where I'm like, am I being this disrespected? But they're making eye contact and laughing, all right? They're laughing. They've got pictures of the mouse from Flushed Away, and they're holding it up next to me, and they're going, this is the mouse from Flushed Away, and I'm going, guys, this is funny, but you're hurting my feelings. I would love to get served, okay? I would love to have some service. Whereas at Coles and Woolworths, I assume that if they don't move people through the checkouts quick, they get whipped. I assume that's what Brad Banducci's final declaration was. He's like, guys, if they're not moving fast enough, I want you to look them in the eyes and whip them. And they're like, Brad, that's, shh, I'll walk out of here. You saw me walk out on 4 corners. I'll walk out of this place with a goddamn whip. Supermarket aisles are littered with signs boasting special, low, or locked prices. What you might not know is that often grocery suppliers and brands are expected to fund these promotions. Holy, I did not know that. What? The suppliers are meant to fund? Okay, let's think about that. So if you're buying milk from a farmer and a farmer's like, oh, we want to promote our milk, the farmer has to pay the dollar for the dollar off. Is that how that works? That can't be right. That means suppliers will often set their recommended retail price at a higher level, knowing they have to offer deep discounts for much of the year. Whoa, okay, I didn't know that. An item the supplier can afford to sell for $15 for some of the year might initially be listed as $30 just so it can later be promoted as 50% off. What? This is more gaslighting than like the Brunswick F-Boys. We're at that level of gaslighting now, isn't it? We're at that level. A full-page ad in Woolworths Fresh magazine costs $30,000. A spot on Coles Radio is worth $28,000. So they're making that much money off them. The Woolworths Fresh magazine is making more money than Rolling Stone Australia, and Coles Radio is making more than Nova. Is that what you're saying? A full-page ad in Woolworths Fresh magazine costs $30,000. Coles Radio, what? When you go around, you listen to Coles Radio, you're just hearing like Pitball timber. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. And you're telling me that when I hear an ad in between that, it's costing them $28,000 to be adjacent to Pitbull. That's the biggest shock I've had in the last. Okay, price matching. The two big compete for customers, but there's often little difference in prices. Yeah, that's where the word Colesworth comes from. It feels like the same place, Coles and Woolworths. I don't know why Woolworths feels slightly fancier. Maybe it's like Hungry Jack's and McDonald's, you know, they're similar. But Hungry Jack's feels like, you do feel like you're at TAFE rather than uni. You know what I mean? Am I allowed to say that? You do feel like you're at TAFE when you're Hungry Jack's, whereas McDonald's feels like, okay, I mean, I'm not at the greatest university, but, you know, I'm paying HECS debt on this burger. I'm paying TEX debt on this fillet o fish. Squeezing farmers. Fruit and vegetables are crucial for getting shoppers through the front door. Jeremy Griffith, who sits on the Horticulture Council at the National Farmers Federation, says when it comes to negotiating prices, the big two hold all the cards. The retailers are acutely aware of this issue and they can leverage it. They can exploit it, offering very super low prices to the growers, knowing full well that at the end of the day, the grower has almost no choice but to accept. Third generation cherry farmer Michael Cuniel was one of those growers. He's now getting out of the industry. This is a concern, isn't it? Because if the farmers, I don't know any young farmers. Like there are probably some famous farmers on TikTok, but I don't know any young farmers who are like, hey, I'm getting into farming. I'm becoming a farmer because I see that as a viable industry. And that's a concern. Okay? Because this morning when I eat a coffee scroll, that has to come initially from farmers. That wheat has to be grown on farms. And if you're not paying farmers correctly, there will be no wheat and there will be no coffee scroll for Mr. Fergus Neal. And that's a problem. That is a huge problem. We never think about food, even though you're having food 3 times a day. If you're a bit more plump, you're having it 27 times a day, but you get the point. Ultimately, you need food to survive, which means you need farmers to survive. I mean, I go through Farmers Direct. This is not a sponsor of the podcast. I just buy Farmers Direct. It's cheaper than the supermarket. Is it called Farmers Direct? Why do I feel like that is? It's called Farmer's Pick. Oh my God, Ferg, you dyslexic. Fuck. It's called Farmer's Pick. It's cheaper than the supermarkets and it comes straight to your door. You don't have to get your photo taken every time you go for a self-serve checkout. It's liberating. It's a beautiful moment. You feel good. You're like, yeah, I'm helping. That's what I'm doing. I'm out here making deals. And also then those farmers aren't having a dude in a Woolworths uniform approach their farm with a name tag. I imagine if you're a farmer, it's kind of like that scene in Inglourious Bastards, you know, where that head honcho, the head Nazi is driving to the farm and he's coming up. That's how the farmers would feel. They're like, okay, here he comes. He's coming out here and he's going to be like, you know how we're buying potatoes off you for 1 cent? Yeah? Well, we're going to take them for free now. You're getting robbed. What? Yeah, that's the deal. All right? Or I'll sell to someone else. All right? I'll sell to Coles. You mean my best friend Terry? You mean my boy Terry? Me and my boy Terry are price matching, motherfucker. There ain't no time for your quibbering. Now show me where the potatoes are. Then they just start shooting the potatoes under the floorboards. And it's a powerful analogy that we can leave this podcast with. Guys, I've just announced my Adelaide Fringe show, okay? Adelaide, Canberra, Melbourne, we're adding more shows, Sydney, Brisbane. Get down. It's called Fergus Neal Saves the World. Buy from Aussie farmers. Support the farmers. Kiss a farmer. Go up to a farmer and give him a big smooch. My name's Fergus Neal, and this is the Ferg Neal Show podcast.